We'd like to welcome you to the Healthcare Revolution podcast, where we empower you to take control of your health, restore your trust in the medical system, and achieve lasting wellness. I am your host, Brad Powell, doctor of physical therapy and owner of an award-winning foundation physical therapy here in the Salt Lake Valley. Each episode, we dive into all things rehab prevention, overall health, bringing you expert insights from leaders across the healthcare fields. Please note, while we aim to provide with the best knowledge and advice, the opinions shared represent those of experts in the field and are not to be replaced with professional medical advice. So let's revolutionize healthcare and wellness together. We're excited to have one of our therapists on our podcast today, Casey Carolan. He is an absolute expert in the golf game. So if you think that you can't golf anymore because you have back pain or it's just inevitable, any questions you have about golf, this is the episode for you. So welcome, Casey. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We've talked a while about having you on the podcast, and now I'm excited to just have this conversation.
It's finally happening.
There's a lot of golfers out there that have just back pain. Back pain's, from my understanding, the most prevalent pain in the game. Is that correct?
100%. Yes. Back pain it's a nature of the sport because it's you're transitioning so rapidly through the golf ball and through the ground that there's a lot of force that's going into your spine, and it's all about how you move to get through the back pain, whereas most people cannot move and their mobility is not good, so they're going to find it in their back pain. So,
yeah, let's talk about that Mythbuster for a minute. We're just going to kick it off with that.
Let's do it.
You know, some people just think back pain just comes with golf. What would you say to those people?
I'd say that, I want to look into their lifestyle, because their lifestyle is most likely not inevitable towards the golf game. They're most likely not preparing themselves for the swing. They're not dynamically loading themselves. They're not dynamically warming up.
So it's almost like a weekend warrior then.
Yeah, weekend warriors are very common when it comes to back pain, because they're just not into the shape they want, but they want to play and keep up with their buddies. So a lot of it is actually, their lifestyle. What are they doing before they even get to the course?
Yeah, I love that, because a lot of people think that I can just go out and that golf is a game, but really we got to think of this as a sport.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're going to go play golf, you need to train for it. If you're not having a good training program, that is a really good reason why you have back pain. Because if you're just going out on the course thinking you're going to perform well in this sport, then, it's one thing if you're going to play mini golf,
right?
And you're just kind of putting around. But another thing that we're talking high performance. Tell me about the torsional load and just what happens through the spine as someone hits a ball.
So a lot of it's how your ground force reactions are happening. So what is the relationship between your body and the ground? A lot of people don't know how to handle the ground. That's why fall risk happens. That's why people have injuries with ankles and knees, is because their ground force reaction. They don't have a good relationship with the ground. With golf, it's very important that you have that relationship with the ground as you're moving into the ground and creating these forces. So a lot of people with back pain don't know how to transition into the ground and load properly from the ground up. They like to go opposite. They go from the up position into the ground, where it's going to crank that lower back, and it's going to cause a lot of shifting and a lot of pressure into that lower back. Whereas if we can just teach them how to move into the ground and use the ground to their advantage, the back pain actually goes away.
So is what you're saying is taking the energy. Where does the swing start?
Exactly.
So you're saying I'm starting the swing at the ground. The energy is going through my foot, through my leg, through my hip, through the rotation, and then it's in sequential order.
Yes.
So it's like if a boxer's using all shoulder to punch, their shoulder's going to get wore out. But if they bring the energy from the ground and push off the ground first, rotate the hips, and end with the shoulder, it takes the torque off the shoulder, right? Is that a good way to explain?
Yes, and it'll actually, if you use the ground properly, it takes away the pressure in your spine, because you're using other structures to produce that power. A lot of people have it backwards, where they need to really crank at the ball, when it's actually, if you can just move properly, it'll unload so many things for you, and it'll actually become more efficient as a golfer, and you'll start seeing the ball go straighter, and you're not going to, strain yourself doing it.
Yeah. So summarizing that, most people have back pain because they're doing the swing wrong. They're starting at the spine, rotating the spine first, and then pivoting through their foot versus pushing off the ground, rotating through the hips, and then rotating the spine.
Yeah, and it's all on that trail side. So where that load side, as you're taking the swing away, a lot of people are just using their spine to do it, versus I want you to use your hips. I want you to use your toes. I want you to use your feet. I want you to use that energy properly and get it into the golf ball. If you can do that, then you're going to smooth sailing, and your scores are going to get better, and your back pain is actually going to go down.
So is it normal to have back pain with golf? Let's just answer that question for all the viewers. It should, if I'm just going to go pick up golf, should I just expect back pain?
I would say if you don't take care of yourself properly, if you don't have the proper sequencing and you don't have the proper lifestyle towards golf, then most likely you're going to have some aches and pains.
Yeah.
But why go through that pattern for longevity when with research based that you can actually get out of that?
Yeah.
So
and that's the same with every sport. People go into golf thinking that back pain is inevitable. But you think about any sport, and I don't even like calling it golf game, because it's not a game. It's literally a sport. If you don't train for it, if you don't prepare your body for those forces, of course your body's going to break down. That's with any sport out there. So I think the biggest take-home message I'm getting from that is make sure you train for the sport you're going into, and don't just expect that your body will be prepared for that.
Yeah, keep your expectations at a reality check. But, if you want to improve, do things for that.
Yeah. I went we had a Christmas party at Top Golf, and Casey showed us how to swing, and he did this Happy Gilmore, and dude could just hit a ball at every single one. I don't even think you missed the ball once. I missed the ball literally every other time.
It may have went right, but I didn't miss it. So
I think we got to get a video clip in the YouTube of this to show people your swing. Casey, you have a really dialed in swing. It's pretty impressive.
It's I've tried for a long time, and then as soon as I started doing this body stuff, it's clicked. Biggest thing is mind-body connection. A lot of times people have it in their mind that they're going to do this swing or do this movement, but there's a disconnect. And so I call it the mind-body connection, or the chain link reference, where everything's kind of connected. And so if we can match our body to what our mind wants to do, then we're actually going to see this improvement. But
yeah, and you hit the ball every time rather than slicing it like me.
A lot of it's the body. Yeah. So we need to work on your body.
I should probably go golfing a couple times. That might help.
That would help too.
Practice helps for sure.
A little bit.
So let's just kind of take a break from that. We'll come back to all these Mythbusters, but tell me about this TPI certification you have. What is TPI? What is it about? Why is it important for physical therapy, for this additional training to be able to help these golfers? And batting sports too, any kind of swing sports.
Okay. So TPI is Titleist Performance Institute. They are out of Oceanside, California. They started back in about 1996, 97. There's a chiropractor named Greg Rose, and he saw the need for data driven. So he was collecting data in 3D analysis back then, which was really hard to do. And so he started collecting data of just generic golfers. And one day he got a client that was the owner of Titleist golf industry, and his son was one of his clients, and he's like, I need you to help me make him better. And so he used his data towards where he was watching the swing, and he started connecting the dots on, everybody has these movement patterns that if you can improve these patterns, then their swing gets better. So he was seeing these relationships between the generic golfers who work 9 to 5 versus the guys who train with it daily, having the same generic issues. So from there, they used Titleist, industry to then create this Performance Institute. And then from there, you go over biomechanic movements and patterns towards, there's 12.
What is biomechanics? What does that mean for for the public?
So biomechanics is referring to how your body moves in a science-based fashion. Mechanically, our body moves and our joints move when we walk. So it's how does that joint move while it's walking, whether it's rolling and sliding, whether it's gliding, whether it's stuck, whether it's, whether is it a smooth movement or is it not? So from there, you go over an in-depth value of each joint by joint approach. So with Titleist Performance Institute, they are really mind-blowing in the sense of they really drive in hard with the mind-body connection and the joint-by-joint approach, where every joint is related to each other in some way, whether that's the foot all the way to the neck. There's a relationship to how things move in your day-to-day life. So it's about breaking down each level and going from there.
I love that, the joint-by-joint approach. There's nothing that's helped me more as a physical therapist than understanding this joint-by-joint approach. There's a training both of us are familiar with, the functional movement assessments. And it breaks it down into segments of every other joint should be either stable or mobile. So, for example, your shoulder is a very mobile joint. The next joint to it is your thoracic spine, your neck. That should be a very stable joint. And then your thoracic spine should be a very mobile joint. And then your lumbar spine, the low back, should be a very stable joint. And then the hip is very mobile, right? So it's every other one. Mm-hmm. What happens when someone reverses that? So say they have a very stiff thoracic spine, like their upper back should be very mobile, but it's very stiff. How does that affect someone's golf game?
I think it can greatly affect the golf game because, stiffness typically means that the thoracic area is falling forward. Okay. It's falling forward where it's rounding forward because of their day-to-day job, right? So you have this tons of flexion.
So the seated desk job.
The seated desk job is the killer of all thoracic mobility issues. And I would be willing to bet that most back pain is probably from your desk job than the actual sport. So essentially from the thoracic area, it needs to be mobile in extension, flexion, side bend, and rotation. And a lot of times if people are stuck in flexion, they are not going to be able to go into extension. They're not going to be able to rotate. So a lot of times that lack of mobility in the thoracic area will turn into neck pain with the swing, will turn into shoulder issues. It'll turn into lower back pain. It'll turn into a whole trifecta when it comes to just having a little bit of tightness in your thoracic area.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, if your thoracic spine, the upper back is super stiff, it has to demand, this is the biomechanics, it has to demand motion somewhere else. If you're requiring motion and it can't get it through the spot it's supposed to get it, it's going to go somewhere else. And most of the time it goes to the low back.
100%. A lot of times, from what Titleist Performance Institute has taught me, a lot of times hip internal rotation and thoracic mobility issues is actually what's causing back pain and hip pain, knee pain, because these stable joints that are supposed to be stable are having to move extra because of the lack of mobility in these mobile joints. So it's actually, if we can look at everything by a joint-by-joint approach, you can actually narrow it down and create improvements in people's daily lives just by, improving this one joint here that we know can help with the golf game. So
yeah, let's talk about hip rotation for a minute. So you need a certain level of hip internal rotation to do a good golf swing, right?
Yep, and that is... And the relationship between hip internal rotation and the golf swing is how do you load your right hip, or how do you pressurize your right side of your body? Pressure meaning going down into the ground versus up. So we want to load down into the ground, and that's a lot of relationship by what's happening in the hip joint. If you don't have that hip mobility, you're actually kind of on an island per se. You're sitting on your own island with that mobility, and your body doesn't know how to do that. So what's it going to do? It's probably going to compensate by moving the spine in different fashions just to get that mobility because it can't find it there. So it's a compensation issue. If you break it all the way down, it's usually a lack of mobility in some fashion in the mobile system.
Yeah, and same thing with the shoulder, same thing with the elbow. What's the second most common injury in golf?
I'd probably say golfer's elbow, or inside the elbow, medial epicondylitis, or elbow pain on the inside. And a lot of that's because, posture setup. Posture is huge when it comes to just generic daily life. But if somebody has a forward flex posture in the golf swing, they're not going to be able to move their shoulders in the right position. And then they have to compensate by like smashing their body into the golf swing where their elbows at this tucked in position, because of the lack of mobility in their body and the lack of loading. And so it's technically a compensation issue, an overuse issue.
Yeah.
We don't want your elbow to do all the work. We want the spine and the body to do the work.
Yeah, you essentially need the whole body to work together in a cohesive fashion, step by step, to be able to make contact with the ball. And if there's one step miss or there's lack of motion at one area, it'll demand the motion somewhere else. And it's just really mechanical breakdown that your elbow, if your elbow is painful, you're loading the elbow too much and you're not sharing the load. It's like a group project. All of us have been in group projects. There's like 2 people doing all the work. It's probably
6
you,
over
right?
there. Yeah, the other 6 are over there wondering what they're doing.
You weren't the 6, right? No, you were the 2.
I was the 2.
Usually there's 2 that pull through, and then there's always that one that's like, my car broke down or my laptop broke. But essentially, like, it's a group project, right? And if everyone's not working together as a team, there can be that mechanical breakdown that something gets overloaded and does it over and over and over again. We're going to take 2 on this. Let's explain that concept again.
Okay.
Breaking down like kind of the team approach.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you start with like, this is a team approach of your body working together. And if it's not working together, this is how you get an injury. Can you explain that simply?
Yeah. So in the golf swing, it's very important that we have a joint by joint approach, and then it's got to be a team approach. Everybody has to work together. We want everyone to be on the same page. We want all the joints to understand how to move together. If there's not a team approach, then a lot of times there's one island over here where the hip joint, say, is just feeling left out, and then it has to do all the work, and it's wondering why the whole body isn't doing it, and so it's going to compensate through lack of mobility or pain. So the joint by joint approach and the team approach is actually very key. In a lot of things in physical therapy, we in my opinion, I think everyone should be looking at the joint by joint approach in generic pain. If somebody has ankle pain, you should probably be looking at their arch stability. What are they doing there? How's their hip mobility? How's their hip strength? How is it stabilizing? How is the dorsiflexion in their ankle doing, or the mobility in that ankle? So you can like kind of look at it as at a eagle's eye view of, like, you can look at it broadly, but I think we all should narrow down everything and use this joint by joint approach to help generic pain.
Absolutely. Like I said, it, this joint by joint approach that we talk about has been the one thing that has expedited my ability to get people better. If you really understand the mechanics of each joint and you see how people learn to compensate over time, that's really the key. People develop some sort of pain or an ankle sprain or something that limits their ability to move temporarily. And then most likely when they get back from that injury, they develop some sort of compensation from that. And then they carry that throughout a lifetime. And let's just use an example of an ankle sprain. You sprain your ankle when you're a teenager. You never gain that motion back. So we call toe up to shin dorsiflexion. You never gain that dorsiflexion back on the one side. What happens to your squat mechanics? You'll rotate the pelvis, right? Because your knee can't come as far in front of the toes. So you'll have an asymmetrical squat. And then you load the knee too much. It can cause ankle problems, knee problems, hip problems, and low back problems, all because a simple ankle sprain that you went to instacare and they said, just put it in a brace for a few weeks and then walk on it, right?
Yeah.
But these mechanical problems happen over time from compensations that people have, and then they carry it out through their lifetime, and then they come to us. And we narrow it down to that ankle sprain 15 years ago, and then working on those mechanics and getting their body dialed in again.
Yeah.
How often have you seen that kind of thing?
Like too often. I think it's great that, PT's now working in towards primary care, because I think we should be in charge of how people are progressing through pain. Like I fully understand what's going on when somebody has ankle pain, and I don't feel like our healthcare system understands that. We want to scan to then give people pain pills when we can just see the discrepancies and progress from there and teach people how to properly move and walk.
Yeah, I'm going to create an Instagram short of this. Why would you go see a physical therapist for ankle pain, for a simple ankle sprain? The reason why is because we are not good at treating it in the medical system. People go into hospitals all the time and they're treated differently with every single case. Sometimes they're booted for 6 weeks, right? What does that do to the ankle? It causes stiff ankles for the rest of your life, asymmetrical stiffness. Why would you go see a PT? Because they are experts at treating those things. They will tell you what you need to do to get back. And it's, that is one of the biggest reasons why you'd go see a PT first. Anything pain, anything injury related, you got to think PT first.
PT first, and a lot of it, the generic back pain situation, right? So say a golfer has extreme back pain after a round, and it's, extreme enough they don't know what to do. 9 times out of the 10, they're going to go to the ER, and they're going to go get an x-ray. It's going to come back negative. They're going to get pain pills.
So why would someone choose physical therapy first for back pain with golf versus going to the ER? Give me a few reasons.
In my opinion, I think choosing them first is because you want to keep moving. The system that we have operating now is teaching people not to move. And to go to a PT first, you want to continue moving. You want to move into your sport. You don't want to stop. You want to continue going. So why go to that situation first when we can be movement specialists with you and help you find movements that are okay and feel good and can help you with this sport? When I think we should, progress towards that scenario in the future with us. I want to be in charge of everybody that has back pain. I want to be in charge of everyone who has shoulder pain with this game, or knee pain or hip pain, because I can teach them to move through it. And pain should not be a thing where you take a pill for. It doesn't do anything. You should move through it, because movement creates healing. It creates blood flow. It creates lifestyle.
Yeah. And just to be clear, we don't mean just go out and keep golfing and keep irritating it, right? It's gradual exposure again, getting blood flow, gentle movements, and getting a skilled physical therapist to help you through it, because anytime someone has back pain, 10 out of 10 times you should go see a physical therapist first. There's no question in my mind. They are the musculoskeletal experts to help you. And they are the most skilled in the musculoskeletal world in the beginning stages. And that's why in Utah, we've passed that bill to become primary care, because it's the entry point. And if you're not getting better with physical therapy, we know the right direction to go before medications, before surgery, before injections, because this can get you better faster. It can get you back to what you need quicker. And that's what it's all about. And in the most conservative way too.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think we all should be the experts in the field first. I think we deserve it. We have the knowledge for it. We continually progress our certifications towards movement. We should be in charge. And so I 100% agree with, seeing PT first.
Yeah. So Mythbuster number 2, here we are. Flexibility is more important than strength. Tell me about that.
So I think a lot of times,
and vice versa too.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times people think they just need to stretch, and I think that's a bad mentality, because you never know what that individual needs. And so I think people should have a movement-based program versus a stretching program, because I don't think stretching will be longevity. I think movement with mobility and strength is longevity. I think it's not one or the other.
Yeah. So is what you're saying is more dynamic movements rather than just long hold stretching.
Correct. Like yoga is great. I think yoga is amazing. I think because, it provides balance, stability, and flexibility. It's providing all three of those. It's not just providing a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think long duration stretching should be kind of in anybody's category, because I think that they don't know how to move through the stretch to begin with. So I think dynamic movements and, provide lubrication to the joints. I think that's really good for overall longevity.
Yeah, if you look at these professional teams of any sport now, the 98% of these professional teams no longer use static stretching. Back when I was in, football in high school, we'd hold hamstring stretch for 30 seconds and we'd count as a team, right? All the way up to 30 seconds. And that was just part of the warm-up routine. But we found through research that actually increases your injury rate with static stretching. If you want to gain mobility later after the exercise, that could be appropriate. But there's not really a time anymore, based on the research, that stretching is really that helpful. We're talking about dynamic movement. How would you describe dynamic movement versus a stretch? Give us a few examples to help us really kind of visualize that.
Right. So dynamic movement to me is like producing a movement towards a goal. If you're static stretching, you're trying to make this muscle feel good. That's the kind of goal mentality. So I think dynamic movement should be more towards the sport, towards the movement, practice that movement in a pain-free fashion. It should mimic the movement, but not do the entire movement. So you're breaking down each movement into categories as dynamic movement happens, versus let me just stretch for like 3 seconds and then I'm ready to go and hit the ball.
So the best warm-up, this is what I'm hearing from you, is the best warm-up is a modified version of what you're going to be doing.
Correct.
Great. I mean, so pretty much all I need to do before my golf game is do a slower version or a broken down version of the steps I'm going to be doing with golf, right?
And essentially, yeah, you want to, move your body in the fashion of the swing beforehand. And a lot of research shows dynamic movement before you play can actually increase distance, increase accuracy, and decrease pain and decrease injuries. So dynamic warm-up should be a thing for the 9-to-5ers and the professionals. Most professionals now in golf are doing 15 to 20 minutes of dynamic movement. They're doing an exercise for activation, and then they're going to the range, and then they're going to play. So they have a commitment of about an hour before they play, creating longevity. If these guys don't do that, they're going to be riddled with issues.
Yeah, I think was what we need to do. We need to attach in our podcast a link to or a PDF of your top warm-up exercises.
I think that'd be great.
Because, people don't realize the importance of a dynamic warm-up routine before golfing. So many people just want to get out on the course, but you should be kind of on the range a little bit, warming up your swing and in doing some dynamic stretches. So maybe we'll add those in too.
I think it's great. I like to don't be afraid to get on the ground too. I think having a relationship,
especially if it's cold, right?
Yeah, especially if it's cold. No, I think it's really important to get on the ground. You don't have to do it at the course, but especially when you're going to do a dynamic movement, I think getting on the ground, starting movement there and then progressing towards standing, I think is a great option. A lot of times taking away that pressure from gravity and then dynamically moving from there can produce more movement, and then you properly load slowly towards the movement rather than just show up late, get to your tee time, show up to the skip the range, skip everything, just go up and swing. You're most likely going to compensate. And professionals wouldn't do dynamic warm-ups if it didn't make sense, and every single one has to. Else they're not going to make it.
For sure. So let's talk about the opposite. So people think that we talked about stretching. Is that going to take away from my power? But what if someone strength trains a lot but doesn't work on their mobility? Talk to us about those kind of cases.
I think Strength is great. It has a time and a place. I think I like to think of the relationship between a 2-to-1 ratio, where you want the joint to be 2 times more mobile than strong. So if you have the mobility to go through the full range, then strengthen. But if you don't have that range, strengthening can actually cause injury. So I think we got to get that range out of people before we load and strengthen them properly. I think that's very huge. And a lot of times dynamic movement will work on both. I like to work on a little bit of balance. I like to work on a little bit of core strength, a little bit of hip activation, all in my dynamic movements, because I want those 3 categories to be right at the forefront when I'm ready to play.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel warmed up by hole 6. I want to feel warmed up by the first swing. And a lot of that's what your preparation's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were talking about that, I was thinking about the importance of gaining mobility first. This is a key takeaway from the podcast. Like, gain your full motion first and then work on the strength through that motion.
100%.
Because if you don't have the motion, you're just strengthening in a shortened range. You want to gain the mobility first, and it could be in the hips, could be in the thoracic spine, your upper back, it could be in your shoulders, right? But you want to gain full mobility first and then strengthen through that full range.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but like if you don't have the full range and you're strengthening through a shortened phase, you're probably putting more load on the tendons in the joint when you don't need to do that.
And ultimately, you're losing a lot of power and efficiency in your swing. You think about, a big, strong dude that's going to go and just hack that ball, right? But then you come up with a lot less muscle and you hit that ball twice as far. Why is that?
Proper movement, proper, mobility and strengthening towards certain joints that I've worked on. And a lot of it's not a lot of strengthening. Like, I'm not going out there lifting heavy. I'm not loading in a sense to where I'm hurting myself. I'm doing things that are functional towards the golf swing, and it takes away my back pain when I do it. So I'm like, perfect scenario for me.
Yeah, it's all about balance, right? And if I remember right, you at Top Golf, you hit it over the net, right?
I don't know about over the net, but I definitely hit the net. I don't have a problem with that.
He hit the high part of the net. I thought it was going to go over a couple times. But, you're a pretty small guy to hit a ball that far. How far is that, by the way?
I think the Top Golf one is like 270-ish, I think. But, on the golf course, I've been able to, easily get over 300 due to my, power and strength in certain joints that I've worked on.
So it's more mechanical than it is strength.
Yeah, it's a lot more training certain movements than overloading that strength.
Yeah, I love it. So let's talk about going from rehab to now performance. What is that kind of approach that you're using at the end of therapy to get them from now they don't have pain anymore? What do you do at those end few sessions to really prepare them for performance and lifestyle change?
I think at that point we got to work on their endurance, because a lot of times if people are out of pain, they're going to feel great and they're going to go back to normal function and normal lifestyle. So I think from that point we got to teach further movements and further abilities that they didn't even know they had. And if I can find something that somebody didn't know they could do that and do that activity and do that exercise because their pain's better and they're moving better, then I'm going to try and, create value that way, where I want to, push them to do these certain movements when they didn't even know they could do that. And I'm going to push them harder than they think they can do. And I'm going to properly, progressively, slowly load them. But I want to tax the body and see how they do, because I want to put it through stressors and make sure that it's fully abolished versus, I think your pain's better and you're, a 6 out of, you were a 6, now you're a 2. So let's go do the same exact thing you've been doing and not create any lifestyle change and see how you do. So whereas I want to create that change. We got to change your abilities. We got to change your lifestyle. We got to make these changes so you can actually see the longevity.
Yeah, I love the philosophy we have in our clinics of keeping people in the game as we're rehabbing them. Right, we might make modifications. We might say, let's do 6 holes instead of 12.
Yep.
We're just kind of modifying it based on the needs of the individual, but not taking you out of the game, because it's the same thing with taking you out of the gym. You lose all those habits, you lose that lifestyle, that passion, that purpose. And we want people to stay there, but we'll make modifications. And then what we'll do is we'll go through the rehab process and be working on those skills at the end, but then also be ramping up your golf game as we're closing out therapy. So that way we know it's abolished. It's not just like, well, we think it is. Your pain's down. Go back to golf and then it all comes back, right? But it's that gradual exposure over time and then building up to a full golf game with no pain before the end of your sessions, right?
100%.
Is there anything you add to that you do in your sessions?
I like to...
Tell me more about load. What does load mean? Like, how are you doing it in the clinic to tax their body, to make sure they're prepared for an actual, like, high-end golf swing?
In my opinion, a load is a feel. So a lot of times when I say the word load, I don't feel like people understand me when I explain that. So I want to get people to actually like feel that hip. I want people to feel their foot.
So they're kind of feeling fatigue. You're feeling it being
fatigue.
tired.
I want you to hyper focus on this spot. I want you to feel what that feels like to load that joint. Because if we can properly teach you that, you can actually get away from your spine that way. A lot of the swing is actually in your hips and your legs, whereas it's not in your upper body at all. Your upper body should be coming through last. Your legs should be doing all the work. So to me, loading the legs essentially is working on a lot of balance training, overloading their abilities to use those legs properly so they feel that ground connection. I think the ground interaction with load is huge. I think if you're not understanding how you're walking or you're standing in a line, like if you don't understand how you feel, then there's no way you can progress past that. So it's a teaching moment to, teach somebody how to properly feel.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so it's that mind-body connection piece that you were talking about earlier, is making sure you feel it at the hip. You feel it rotating through the foot. You're feeling the rotation come through your trunk, right? So you're essentially breaking down the joints and getting people to feel that mind-body connection, so that way they know how to do the swing in the most efficient way.
Another thing to help with sequencing is and getting independent movement of these joints and these sections of the body. Because if my thoracic or your mid back doesn't know how to independently move from your lower half, then you're going to be stuck in this off-kiltered pattern. So creating some independence from like the lower half and to the upper half, creating that independence actually helps quite a bit with people in their control and their proper feel in the swing.
Absolutely. And so many people forget about that, because it goes back to the golf game. It's not just a game, it's a sport. And you are doing it for fun, but we got to prepare for it. What's kind of your go-tos for golf lessons? Someone, maybe they don't even have pain, they don't have elbow pain, back pain to come see a PT. What's your go-to for just training these mechanics early on in life or even late in life for someone that just wants to pick up golf?
I think it's very important, as whoever's helping this individual is watching the individual perform their own tasks and how does that individual move. We can't categorize anybody into we already know you can't load that right hip. You can't independently use that mid back. I like to watch the individual move and then I go from there versus, put everybody into a category. I think it's very important that in PT that we treat people as an individual, because they deserve that. They deserve to be treated special, and they deserve to be treated with that one-on-one care. Whereas I don't want you to be look at a video and say, go swing like Rory, who's one of the greatest golfers in the world. There's no way that I'm going to get Joe down the street to swing like Rory. I got to get Joe to swing like Joe. Mm-hmm. I can't match the professionals. I can look at each category of what the professionals do, but then I have to adapt towards Joe. I have to get him better. I can't get him to look like Rory. I like to take it as an individual aspect. So it's tough to say because every individual has their own thing. But
tell me of a patient that you've had in the past that just came to you and kind of felt defeated. They felt like they were never gonna play golf again, and And tell me about the experience you had with them and getting them back on the course.
Yeah, so I've had a few of those. Namely speaking, the first one that comes to mind is one of my more high profile patients that I've had in the past. One that can travel in private jets. They go all over the world to golf, and they've been very successful in their life and their own business, but they want to golf now. A lot of times I've seen people come with a walker because their back pain's so bad, and they are like so defeated because they can't golf and they can't do what they love in their retirement phase. And so this specific patient I'm thinking of came to me in kind of like a walker situation where he couldn't move, he couldn't function. Getting him to properly, move his hips properly, move his thoracic area properly, getting him to move through pain-free movements and teaching him how to stabilize those movements in the swing properly, he was able to get back to, full travel. He's traveling in his private jet again. He's going to other tournaments that he wants to, and then he comes in and he's a beam of light. Like, he's like, you saved me.
Yeah. And it's so cool to see these people that just feel like they can never go enjoy life again. Last week we talked about keeping the adventure alive. Like, how do we do that? It's just learning these concepts. Most of pain in life is truly just compensations, your body's check engine light to say, you got to get this checked out. And it's recurring because you're moving in a certain way that's causing that constant irritation. But if we can teach you how to move differently, these movement patterns are everything. And 90% of the time, they take away your pain. Yeah. And figuring out those movement patterns is how we customize them to each individual patient is so critical. But seeing them get back to golf or whatever they love to do is just it's just so inspiring to see.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things, especially if I can have a quick session with somebody and then they come back saying that they had more enjoyable time golfing. They found the fun again. Because golf can be a very frustrating sport. It's one of those sports that's very mental. It demands a lot from your strength and how you're thinking about yourself. And a lot of times, if you can just bring the fun back, it's night and day difference.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of thinking about what I gained from this podcast today. So really, number one that comes to me is back pain. It's common in golf, but it's not normal. It's something that you can get rid of. Just find an expert that deals with rehab and in golf and work through those things, because it is common to have back pain in golf, but it's not normal. We shouldn't normalize it and fix it. Number two is bring the energy from the ground. A lot of people's golf swing gets kind of dysfunctional, you could say, because they're starting at the top and not at the bottom. Bring the energy from the ground and work through the ankle, through the knee, pelvis, and into the spine and rotation, right? Mm-hmm. And just master those little things, And then number three is lifestyle. Like, make sure you're training for your sport. If you're going to go golf, just don't think you can just go golf without training for it. And that's what I think the biggest issue with people when they golf is they just think that they can just go golf every weekend and never really exercise or cause any forces through their back or their legs. They're not training the right muscles, and it just gets fatigued and it compensates. Is there any other last takeaways that you hope to distill upon our golfing community?
I think that biggest thing is pain is not a red flag. It's an indicator. It's something needs to change. It's something needs to adapt. So see the pain. It's okay to have it. It's not a bad thing, and work through it. Move through it. Movement can be pain relief. So if you have back pain, don't go quiet. Talk to somebody about it. Be open about it. Be open to change. Be open to adapt. Don't be afraid to adapt your lifestyle towards the sport you love so you can have longevity.
Yeah. And how do people contact you if they want to come see you?
Contact me through Foundation Physical Therapy. I have, we can go email there. We can come see me at the Fort Union Clinic in Salt Lake. Pretty available. As available as you need me to be, I'll be there.
Yeah, if you're a golfer, you have back pain, hip pain, elbow, shoulder, Casey is your guy. He's got your back. and help you get to your golf game in the way you want. So thanks for joining us today on this episode, Casey. We appreciate what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate you.